Beautiful summer day in the woods. I'm hiding from the heat amongst these tall green beauties. Wanted to share a quick reflection on a chat I had, a discourse with GPT regarding fear and paranoia. It got pretty in-depth, so I will share that below, of course, and recommend you take a look if it's something that interests you. It was inspired simply by walking past the firehouse in the area here and the sign out front that is amusing, if not revealing. And, it's got the typical arrow with the multicolored warning signs of the threat level for forest fires, which is, in the high end right now because it's summer and things have dried out a little bit, as they do every year. It's extreme or near extreme, and below that we have the boiled water notice in effect, which seems to be a perpetual thing in summer, which is hilarious considering how much nature is around us and how much easily we could handle such issues and these things that could have been remedied a generation or two ago, and yet they never have bothered, or those who have tried don't get the political backing or regional support to be able to do so. I know of a few folks in town, one specifically who's doing research and testing out different theories and systems in his own backyard to try and discern something that might be scalable that would work for the greater community, and that's great. But, it's on his own time, on his own dime, as it were. But we had some interesting chats about it, and I pointed him to a few resources that might be of use, specifically using AI to be able to further expand his research more quickly, to be able to, collate things from multiple sources more easily. So he found that to be useful because it's able to pull information from multiple data sets and from different sources fairly quickly and help him to modify and improve his system and ideas and his process of developing this technology. Because it's not like he's inventing anything from scratch, right? This water filtration, something that's passive and easy and cheap, even free to maintain. It's not an original idea, As long as we've had towns and villages and cities, we've had need for water infrastructure and moving that flow around and through and back and around and filtering and cleaning and processing afterwards how it's polluted or toxified or otherwise. And I think how it's done in cities by and large is the wrong way, but it's profitable, and the paradigm isn't going to shift unless it's done by the people who decide that they want something new and better and actually get involved and make a noise and get in the faces of the bureaucrats and people that are stuck in some sort of bureaucratic inertia, as it were. But the idea that it brought up, looking at this fire advisory and an open fire ban from May to October, and don't touch anything that's flammable or the whole planet's going to burn up, and the water advisory and boil the water, it's just this fear and paranoia. It's subtle, but you're walking by the sign every single day. You're seeing it a few times, even in your periphery. If you're not aware of it, your subconscious is taking in this kind of messaging. These kinds of signs are fractals of the greater systems and fractals of a greater issue that happens and proliferates through towns, villages, cities, countries, entire states, and internationally, right? The messaging and the ideas that are perpetrated upon us from the powers that be foment fear and paranoia. And it's subtle, but these are cumulative things as we've become aware of how all these negative things have a momentum and a cumulative, energetic, psychic, spiritual, emotional, psychological after effect that can sit inside your body and can literally lodge itself into your bones, into your organs. And this is from whence illness and disease come, right? Perpetual trauma and psychological stimulation in a negative sense draws energy away from maintaining health and well-being. And if your body's constantly in fight or flight or panic and anxiety, it's never able to deal with the normal things of detoxification and processing of inputs and what you're eating and such, how it affects how you breathe, how you sleep, how you process ideas and information coming at you, right? So if you're knocked off balance in perpetuity, your body is not able to do its most basic and natural functioning, such as maintaining optimal health and cleaning out toxins and rebalancing your psychology and biology and biochemistry So the world around us, with this negative sort of messaging and artificial manufactured crises and disaster capitalism and all the rest of it, is constantly inundating our senses with these negative ideas and promises of disaster and doom and cataclysm, and that we need to prepare. We need to constantly be on the worrying side of the equation and anxious about the future and potential disasters and potential wars and conflicts and potential attacks from the other side, from the other country, from that culture, from that, uncontrollable element and that rebellion faction and whatever you want to call it. All these completely made up, man-made issues that don't really need to exist, and yet they do. Why is that? Well, it's not a simple black or white thing. It's a whole lot of gray. And in our modern era, in a time of relative prosperity and abundance, why is there such a vast gray area? Why is there such an imbalance? Why is there such a need for seemingly negative and deleterious policies and lawmaking and geopolitics and bureaucratic and systemic and institutional corruption? Why is there so much polarity, duality, and the fomenting of this fear and paranoia? How could that possibly be a good thing, and why does it persist so aggressively? Given that we live in times where there shouldn't be a hungry mouth, there shouldn't be a homeless person, there shouldn't be any war or conflicts, there's no need for trade sanctions, there's no need for these divisive politics, there's simply no need for maneuvering and everything that happens through the manipulations of the system, through the powers that be, these parasitic and predatory things that I've spoken and written about. We don't need these things to exist, and yet they do. And why would that be? Well, when we speak about these things in a spiritual manner, of course, everything starts within, right? Everything comes from within us, and our experience and reality shaping is an inside-out process and adventure and experience. So this existential idea, and why we have so much of this purported negativity out in the world, must in some way be starting and founded upon these ideas that start from within. And what does that mean? Well, if we were processing and remediating these internal struggles and battles and imbalances, as it were, or addressing the spiritual vacuum or the shadow work, you could call it, I suppose, though that's a bit of a simplification, addressing these ideas of forgetting and disconnection and dissociation from what we are and what we could be as sovereign creator beings, because we've been dissociated, whether through conscious or unconscious means, whether through these extrinsic, polarizing and dualistic notions that keep separating us from our better knowing and our spiritual remembering. We see out in the world this dark mirror effect, this reflection of what seems to be all the evils that perpetuate and proliferate throughout the world, these parasitic factors, these elites, and these governments, these banks, and all of these people and entities and egregores and these agenda-seeking and crisis manufacturing elements of our world that seem to have an inexhaustible source of energy. And where could that possibly come from? It has to come from us. We're the creators. We're the initiators. We're the spark. We're the fundamental source of all that power. So I think the important part of it is to reclaim that, to begin again from within, to understand that whatever we're seeing out in the world that seems to be, the negative, the evil, the dark, it has a positive aspect. We're the positive aspect. So if we can address where these imbalances and voids, vacuums, and lacking parts of ourselves are not being addressed and taken into account and rebalanced and reconnected to the truth, to the remembering of what we really are, we're going to continue feeding into that machine and that system out there, outside of us, and believing in the idea that out there that's what's real and that's what's true and that's what we have to fight and deal with and resist, which couldn't be further from the truth. We need to reclaim that authority. We need to take back that sword, that pen, that implement. We need to recognize our capacity for creatorship. We need to remember again who and what we really are. Otherwise, that reflection, that outward worldly sort of appearance will tell us. And They'll repurpose it and rewrite it and represent it in an artificial, synthetic, manufactured way. Because we're giving them authority, we're giving them the permission to do so. We're deferring that authority. We're deferring it away. And that's why you see this proliferation of centralized authorities and their desperate, constant need to create problems, to create solutions for the problems that they have to keep creating to legitimize their existence in the first place. They have to keep taking more money, they have to keep taking more taxes, they have to keep taking, more fees and all these things just to keep justifying their own existence, even though the returns are never realized, even though the infrastructure is never improved, even though they are never fundamentally improving anything for anyone ever for any length of time. They're just token things, of course, and as any, good politician is just going to say what needs to be said so that they can maintain their presence in office, or they can get installed into certain positions to push other agendas from some greater behind-the-scenes entity that we have no idea what their actual purpose is, except to keep siphoning off and vacuuming off into their void that which we certainly, if we were completely informed about and aware of, would never consent to and would never go along with. But because we're not really of a mind of awareness, because we're not conscious of all of these things that are playing out in the world, because we're not being active and involved and engaged in these things, we just trust, well, someone else is taking care of it, so that's why we give them the money. Well, someone else will get to it. Somebody else, I'm sure, is already working on it. They must be. Where's all that money going? Well, indeed, that's probably the question of the moment, isn't it? And we explored some of these ideas in that chat as well. So I do recommend scanning it. And there are a few sections that you'll probably want to read several times, not necessarily because of anything I said, but in that discourse, in that dialogue, ideas that were presented and outlined that are critical to understanding the framework and this narrative scaffolding that happens in our world, and in how this reflection is presented back to us, which is information, which is data, which is simply opportunities for us to garner more, better, deeper understanding of what's going on, so that we can again reclaim that agency, reclaim that autonomy and authority, that authorship, so that we can assume our creative position in all that story, in that narrative, to dispel that nonsense and that negativity, to dispel all of their spell casting and vacuuming up of all our creatorship and creative resources, taking away our days and weeks and years of life and enjoyment, health and well-being, and all the rest of that. So essentially, when you're feeling that fear and paranoia, when you're in a constant state of mind of worry, anxiety, angst, confusion, and frustration, if you're constantly being reactive to the ideas and stories and headlines, you have some work to do. That's a signal, an opportunity for you to remember again, for you to start realigning with the better truth, with the bigger truth, with the greater truth of what's inside. And that you are in some way feeding that machine, that monster, that you are providing it with sustenance by being reactive, by being deferring and giving authority to someone else and hoping that something or someone else is going to take the responsibility for fixing these things and remedying those situations. And it starts right in your own home, in your own heart, in your own mind, obviously first, but in your family, your home, your backyard, your community, your town, your village, on and upward. Everything reverberates out from there, right? You are the epicenter for this reality. You are that creative epicenter. So learn to remember, realign, reorient yourself with that greater truth, that remembering, that spiritual sovereignty that comes from within. Fear and paranoia are data, it's information, it's ideas, it's partial truth at best, not the whole truth, not the whole story. Have a good one.
For shadows you bring of your own, a slap in the face of your mother, your chances of peace are unknown. Learning to step back, release.